Randy Benson. Give him a hand.
All right, everybody. Thank you again, David and David for having me and for all of you being there. Again, I wish I could be there with you. I just wanted to say a few words about what I am currently working on, a follow-up to The Searchers Part 2. And there are a number of reasons I wanted to start this movie, start this follow-up. And I promise it won't take the 14 years that it took for the first one to get done. I promise you it won't take that long. There are so many researchers I couldn't interview in the first film that I just felt that I owed it to myself and to the community to continue that larger project of collecting interviews about who the researchers are and why they do what they do and what the fruits of their labor have been. The next piece of my puzzle will be exploring the topic someone would have talked. That's always what critics of the researchers say. Someone would have talked, someone would have had a deathbed confession. Well, a lot of people did talk, and I'll be exploring that topic in detail about all the people who did talk and why no one was listening. People went to the New York Times, to the Post, finally getting published and sometimes getting published in periodicals like Rolling Stone or Penthouse or Playboy. So this will be a topic that I'll be talking about a lot. Also, I'll be exploring the issue that of people who have been killed over the years, starting with the research of Penn Jones and the Forgive My Grief series and his work in the Midlothian Mirror. You know, Texas is filled with amazing researchers, and I think it's time that researchers like Penn Jones got a little more due than I was able to give Penn in The Searchers Part 1. And so these are topics that I'll be exploring in The Searchers Part 2. Have a lot of traveling to do. I'll be interviewing people on site in their space, watching them research, collecting stories for posterity, and the such. In the past, with The Searchers, I included a box set of every minute of every interview with all the researchers I interviewed. And so that was 60 hours of interviews that I made available. And I intend to do the same with Part 2. So, so that's kind of where I'm moving with my research and what I'm doing. And that's kind of a summation, but I'd love to field questions if anyone has anything. I don't know if we're set up for that right now, but you know, I can always let y'all enjoy lunch also.
Hello.
Hey, Randy, can you hear me?
I can indeed.
All right. I think that we weren't prepared to end that quickly, so we weren't prepared for questions. Does anybody have a question for Randy? If so, here comes Gary Fannin. So it'll take just for a second for him to get up here.
Randy, can you hear me?
I can indeed, yes.
I was just wondering in terms of people that you're going to be interviewing, and I don't even know if he's still alive, but Henry Hurt, I think, did a very important early investigative work. And then actually Epstein, Jay Epstein, who went to the other side, but again, early on, he did an important work. So would you consider doing interviews with Henry Hurt and Edward J. Epstein?
100% yes. And I'll be reaching out to the community at large and collecting names of people that I need to interview that deserve to be interviewed before, well, while we still have time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Randy, it's Gary Fannin.
Hey, Gary.
How are you doing, sir?
Good, and
Hey,
I'll be
just,
I'll be visiting you, so.
all right, well, I'll give you the fake address.
Okay.
Here's looking up your old address. But the question I was going to ask you is, obviously I have the entire box set that you did of the Searchers, and you said you were going to do it in the Searchers too. But do you have some of the names that you plan on questioning, so to speak?
Oh gosh, that is a huge question, and
Too loaded of a question for you?
that's a big question because if you can see, I have a page of names of people I would love to speak with. I've already spoken with Ed Tatro, which I was thrilled about, and Larry Rivera also. I plan on traveling around the country, going to Kansas City and interviewing the Kansas City boys, making a return to Texas and collecting more interviews there. There are people in, gosh, I haven't had a really big sit down with, I'm looking forward to having a sit down with McBride in San Francisco, and hopefully another sit down with Peter Dale Scott, Newman. It just goes on and on and on. So again, on this list, I probably have 50 names, and I just plan on starting with the names that collecting interviews before people while they're still with us. So kind of starting with the first generation researchers and working my way back. One exciting thing is that there are a lot of young researchers joining our ranks. So we have 4th, 5th, 6th generation researchers now. So that's a pretty exciting piece of our community that I want to shed some light on as well. Other people who run conferences and symposiums, Chris Gallup in right there in Texas is another person I'm really looking forward to speaking with. And so yeah, a lot of people on the list. And you.
Hey, Randy, one of the members of the audience asked if you wanted to reveal your email address so you could be contacted.
Absolutely. You can reach me at rbenson@thesearchersfilm.com. If you go to my film's website, there's a contact page on the back, so you can get in touch with me there. And that's thesearchersfilm.com.
Ed says he misses you.
Miss you too. And I tell you, Uncle Ed, I miss everybody. I really, this is the first time I've failed to make it to Dallas since the birth of my son in 2008. So It's a little bittersweet to not be there.
Well, it's definitely not the same without you, Randy. David Denton, why don't you come up here, please? Ladies and gentlemen, that was Randy Benson, the director, producer, writer, filmmaker for The Searchers and upcoming Searchers 2. And David Denton's going to come up and introduce our next speaker, Brian Edwards.
Well, I've known Brian Edwards for a long time, and I really classify Brian Edwards as one of the great all-around researchers in this, if you want to call it a business in this field. His breadth of knowledge is pretty amazing. Of course, he's deep background in police and detective work, and he recently appeared on the Oliver Stone's very important documentary that came out, and he's going to come up and talk to you for a little bit today, maybe some about that or some other things. I kind of gave him a free hand, but I'm sure everything he's going to talk to you about is good. Let's give a big hand for Brian Edwards.
Thank you, David. I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about, but I'll be glad to revert back to the Oliver Stone experience. If you'd like, I can tell you how that all came about. And hopefully most of you will have seen it before the end of the weekend. If not, I'm sure there'll be copies available somewhere. I got a call one afternoon from Jim D'Ingenio. I never talked to Jim. He's up here, I'm down here on the bottom of the pool. And he said, there's a guy in California that I just talked to. He didn't tell me the name. He said, there's a guy in California that would like to talk to you. Would you be interested in taking his call? Sure, as long as they're not trying to sell me insurance, I don't care. So he says, okay, I gave me your number. Just wanted to check with you to make sure it was okay. So we hung up the phone. That's how brief our conversation was. And I shortly got a phone call on my cell phone that said California. I don't know anybody in California. I didn't know Jim lived in California. So I pick up the phone, unmistakable voice said, is this Brian? Yeah, hello. He said, Jim D'Ingenio just got off the phone with me and said should contact you. Would you be interested in helping us out with a project? And the longer he talked, I knew exactly who it was. I think I said something like, is this Mr. Hello? Hello, Oliver. I didn't call him Oliver because I don't remember if I even gave my name. But I said, sure, I'd be glad to. I wanted to say since I was a smart guy, I would have said, well, let my people get in touch with your people. We'll work out something, you know. Anyway, so he said, this is Oliver Stone. I went, duh. He said, would you be interested in helping me out with a project? Well, geez, what do you think I'm going to say? No, I'm pretty busy. Just moving into a new house. I got other things to do. I said, of course I would. So he said, well, I'll have my producer contact you and make all the arrangements. I'm thinking, well, that's cool. Before he hung up, he says, now we're doing 3 shootings. He did say shootings. He said, we're doing 3 shooting sequences in Washington, D.C., Texas, and California. And he said, you've probably been to Texas a few times. I said, yeah, but I love Texas. He said, we're doing one in Washington. Put me down for that. So we went, my wife and I flew up to Washington. David Knight drove by himself. How many hours did it take? 19. 19 hours to drive up there to be I don't know, he just wanted to be there. So I'm glad he did. But anyway, put us up in a nice hotel. A nice hotel. Very nice. It wasn't Motel 6, I'll tell you that. But anyway, so there we are on the set. I think the reason my hands are there is because I think I wet my pants. But it was very humbling I mean, I know he's just a guy like we are, and ladies, you're just, you know, he's a human being just like we are. But when Jim D'Ingenio said, okay, we're going to put you in makeup, you know, be in this room for makeup, I go, makeup, come on, really? I mean, what do I need makeup for? So we put makeup. Anyway, so he ushered me into the room, and there he is sitting on the sofa, on the phone. Wow, that's really Oliver Stone. Pulse check. Oh my God, you're really Oliver Stone, aren't you? I think that's what I said. He goes, yes, I am. So I gave him a copy of Beyond the Fence Line. Maybe someday they'll make a movie out of that. But anyway, so we did he chit-chatted for a little while, get to know you kind of thing. He says, here's what I want to talk about. Okay, I can converse about that semi-intelligently. And so we did the almost 3.5 hours. Wasn't it, David? It was almost 3.5 hours in this little room that they converted, the little converted suite into a studio, and got done. That's my wife on the left there. She was over in another part of the room watching it on a little tiny little monitor. She's, watching me, making sure I don't pick my nose or anything and act stupid. But anyway, we got done with that, and then that night, what David's story is, as we left, they ushered me out of the room, and I think it was, who's the guy from Canada that came in right, or no, it was John Newman came in right after me. Doesn't matter. But David, I come out to David, and I asked the producer, I said, I got a buddy of mine drove 19 hours to come here to meet Oliver Stone. I said, would it be possible for him to come in? No, he's pretty busy. I said, well, maybe later? Well, we'll see. So we got David in there, take a picture. Did you remember if you ever said your name too, or you just? Yeah, that was fun. Got a picture and an autograph and all that. But then later that evening, I was back in my room, and the phone rings, and it was D'Ingenio. Says, come on down to the lobby, we're going out to dinner. Who's we? Who do you think? Oh, okay. So we go down to the lobby, get in the car. David's the chauffeur. We're driving all over Washington, D.C. trying to find this.
With an outdated GPS, remember?
That's right.
Because they kept saying, can you just get our asses there to
That's
the
what he kept
restaurant?
saying, yeah. That was fun. So it took us an hour to get to a restaurant. It was probably 2 blocks away. But anyway, so we ate dinner and had a good time and ate Asian. How many of you here have eaten Asian fusion before? I don't even know what the hell that is, but we ate it. And so we parted ways a couple months later.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Come back now. We didn't just part away at the end of that. We had to go shopping, Rock, remember?
That's right.
Got to tell the story about the shopping experience at the Walgreens.
They gave me a stipend for appearing in the show, okay? That's standard Hollywood deal. So Dave and I paid for the dinner. Guy's worth $70 million, and I'm paying for dinner. I still don't get that, but that's okay. No, I'm good. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, I'll leave it there. So on the way back, Oliver is sitting in the front seat. David's driving. My wife and I and D'Ingenio are in the back seat, and I belched because of the spicy food. And Oliver turns around. Are you okay? And my wife, my dear little sweet wife, says, oh, he does that all the time. He goes, no, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. He tells David, find a drugstore. This man's in distress. He goes, you need Alka-Seltzer. And so from the time he said that until we pulled up to a Walgreens, he was telling us the benefits of Alka-Seltzer. Lived on it in Vietnam. That's all we ate. Just ate it dry. Kill the taste of all the crappy MREs we're eating. So we went into the Walgreens. I don't think the man ever shops by himself or for himself, because he stood in the doorway like, where do I go? What is this place? I said, Oliver, what are you looking for? He says, Alka-Seltzer. I said, I'm sure it's at the back. We go back. I pick up a little box of Alka-Seltzer. So I don't need it, but to help him get through his day, I picked up the box. He goes, "Do you have any money?" "I don't have. All I have is a black American Express card." So I have a picture of him. I had to take a picture of it. He's at the counter, this little Chinese lady. He's showing her a black American Express card for $6 purchase. I said, "No, we'll pay for that." So not only did I had to pay for the dinner, there's us at dinner, and not to toot my own horn, but D'Ingenio told David and I that that's the first time, as long as D'Ingenio has known Oliver, that how comfortable he was with us and enjoying his day. Nobody's asking for anything. We're just 4 people out there eating food and drinking beer. So he enjoyed that a lot. Anyway, so 2 months later, get a call to go out to LA, do the same thing. And then you see the results. I think I counted 16 minutes I'm in the film. So it's better than being on the cutting room floor, I guess. So it was a highlight of my life. I can't even say I worked with Oliver Stone. I was in the same room with him, and I was in the same car with him, and that was my life. That was my 2 weeks in front of the hot sot. So I enjoyed that. So anyway, enough about me. So what else do you want to know? Anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Hey,
Yes,
Brian.
Yes, David.
How do you feel that Oliver Stone's new book, because it's a book and a video,
Yes.
how do you think that's impacting the community as a whole by bringing back out, having Oliver Stone do a second film? Well, kind of actually third, because he did JFK, then he did Beyond the Question Conspiracy,
Right.
or whatever the one was that was on the special features,
Right.
which was its own VHS, and now he's done 2 versions of the one that you were in. So how do you think that is helping the community and getting the information out there?
I think it's important that, I'm glad he did it to revitalize the interest in the assassination of President Kennedy. The book is a complimentary it's almost a transcription of all the witnesses he talked to, or all the experts. I don't consider myself an expert, but I think he did that because he was trying to tell the critics that I didn't make this up. These are real people who know real things. And I hope that stimulated the interest again. It certainly is a prominent part of my life as far as what I dedicate myself to do. And so I think it at least revitalized me, I'll put it that way. It made me want to dig deeper now. So that's what I did. What else? Anything? Ask me anything. Nothing. Okay.
I've got a question, Brian.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm online.
Hey, yeah, I've got you.
I really enjoyed your presentation on the shooters in Dealey Plaza. And one of the questions, well, follow-up questions, but one of the questions I had was, having talked about a meat shot happening in Dealey Plaza, and a lot have speculated that might be the back wound. Could you just comment on that versus a meat shot versus maybe that being a ricochet?
Well, yes, when he refers to a meat shot. Yes, when he refers to a meat shot, M-E-A-T, meat, it's in quotations, a meat shot. A meat shot is not a fatal shot. Usually it's aimed at a big part of the body that kind of frees the person in place, kind of hold them still. Yeah, I think a meat shot was fired. I think the one that hit him in the back. But remember, if you remember my presentation, when I was training, one sure way to end someone's life is to hit them in the head. The body shot, I think whoever shot misfired, or not misfired. They were shooting for the head, and it caused them to not hit the head. But, the shot that hit him in the throat, they were aiming for the head. The shot in the back, they had to have been aiming for the head. They didn't have to be, but I think, yes, to answer your question, I think the back shot was a meat shot to hold him in place, They probably knew he had a back brace on. He wasn't as flexible as he would have been if he hadn't had that on. Yeah, I certainly think that that was part of the scenario. Somebody had to shoot the meat, hit the meat shot, and the back would be the most logical place. And then the other killers could shoot and focus on the head. But yes, I think that's a good question, because a lot of people don't know what a meat shot is, but now these people do and you guys do, so that's good. If I was going to set it up, if I was the coordinator or the planner, I'd have people in front of, behind, and the side of him. There's no way he can escape. It doesn't make any sense to put all your marbles in one guy. What if he decides he can't come into work that day? What if Bill Fraser had a flat tire? What if he says, I'm not doing it? It doesn't matter, he's the patsy. But you have people in place that are ready to go. They know where he's going to be. A car has to go on the road. It can't elevate and fly away. It has to be on that road. So you can focus all your shots into that roadway. He's going to run into one of those bullets, and it only takes one. That's all you need, is one bullet to end it. But if you fill that car up with bullets, you're going to get lucky. It's like shooting free throws. You shoot 100, if you make 10, you did good. You fire 10 bullets, you get one, you did it. You did your goal. You accomplished your goal. Yeah, go ahead.
Your book, Beyond the Fence Line, I was lucky enough to interview Ed as well, with Debbie, his daughter.
Yeah.
Some of the people here have no idea who Ed Hoffman is. Can you just briefly talk about your experiences with Ed?
Sure, be glad to. Ed was Casey was a high school teacher for 30, 40 years, and he and I got together to do research, and he put on his own volition, organized a high school trip to Texas. And we rented a luxury coach bus, and we filled the bus up. We came down to Dallas, talked to witnesses, and one year, I don't remember how we met Ed, but I remember seeing him on TV or on the Men Who Killed Kennedy, and I said, that'd be an interesting person to talk to. And so I contacted his daughter, Mary, and I said, here's who I am. Would your father be interested? Oh, I'm sorry. I know how I remembered it. Casey and I came down here by ourselves to do research, and I said, let's go by the Hoffman Floral Shop. Ed Hoffman and his family owned a floral shop out in Grand Prairie, and it's still there today, but they have no ownership to it. But anyway, so I pulled up to the door and knocked on it, and Mary came to the door, and she said, yeah, my father's out on a delivery. He'd love to talk to you. Great. Okay, so we waited. Sure enough, Ed pulled in. Mary translated for him. He was a deaf mute. He only knew American Sign Language. She translated what we asked him. Would you be interested in talking to us? For a guy that couldn't talk, he talked a lot. He talked a lot. So that developed our friendship. So we learned his story from the Men Who Killed Kennedy, and we asked him to, walk us through that. Every time we brought the kids down, he would tell that same story. Every time he'd tell the same story. Now, I interviewed, as a cop for 22 years, I interviewed a lot of people. Murder suspects, child molesters, burglary suspects, everything in between. Ed Hoffman is one of the most sincere, accurate witnesses I've ever talked to. And consistent. He says the same thing every time. So we became good, close friends. We stayed at their house. We talked to him and said, hey, would you be interested if we wrote your story? Oh my God, he started crying. So we decided to write the story. Ed Hoffman tells us that on the day of the assassination, he was working at the research and development section of Texas Instruments out in North Texas. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but you have to have some intelligence to work in the R&D department at a high-tech place like Texas Instruments. Anyway, Ed said he was on his morning break, and he chomped down on a piece of ice, and it broke his tooth. And he was in severe pain. And so he asked his supervisor if he could go to his dentist. I don't know how he communicated that to his dentist, but anyway, the supervisor said, yeah, go ahead and go. As Ed was driving towards Grand Prairie from North Texas, he drove past Dealey Plaza and saw people on the Stemmons Freeway with placards that said, welcome JFK, or whatever it might have been. Then he remembered, yeah, the president's coming to Texas. He didn't know it was coming through Dealey Plaza. So Ed pulled off Stemmons, went through Dealey Plaza, trying to look for a place to park. He said the cops were not letting people park anywhere along Main, Houston, or Elm. Couldn't find a place close enough, so he drove back out onto Elm, out onto Stemmons, and stopped on just past the railroad trestle, got out on the got his car parked on the curb on the shoulder of the road, and walked back to underneath Stemmons Freeway. He's underneath Stemmons. The president's car would have come straight at him. Well, he couldn't see very well, so he went up on the top of Stemmons and sat there. Now remember, Ed Hoffman is a deaf mute. He can't hear a thing. Cars whizzing past him at 55 miles an hour back in '63 didn't bother him. So he was sitting on top of the bridge on the overpass. He had a clear, unobstructed view to the east of the book depository and the parking lot and the stockade fence. He saw all of that. He saw Lee Bowers' tower. He had a clear view of everything back there. And he said he got to that position about 12:15. Shortly after he arrived, he was looking. A person who has the disability of no hearing, his other senses are more keen. Ed's senses of sight, well, he relied on that as his way of communicating or, understanding where he is. He saw activity behind the fence. He said a man in a suit and a hat, like a fedora hat and a suit, was standing behind the fence between the cars and the fence. And he said that guy was walking back and forth like a lion in a cage, back and forth. Didn't see anything in his hands, didn't see anything, he wasn't talking to anybody. And he said he did see a man by the railroad switch box. It's a manual switch box. It's about this tall and about that big around, square. And he said he saw another man in a railroad worker's outfit, like a jumpsuit of some type, coveralls. He said it didn't appear that these two guys knew each other because they were 30, 40 yards apart. He said he saw cars turning the corner onto Elm Street. He didn't know it was the president. He just assumed it was a parade of some kind. He said the man in the suit with the hat bent down, had a long cylindrical object. He had it pointed over the fence. Now, Ed could see that, but he couldn't see the man's face. He could see, what color skin he had. He just said he was a guy with a suit and a hat. Pointed something over the fence. He saw a puff of smoke, and he thought the guy was smoking a cigarette or a cigar. He said then the man sprinted down the fence line towards the railroad overpass, and he stopped suddenly, and he tossed this object, which he now could tell it was a rifle, underhanded to this man who was standing by the railroad, the switch box. You going to show it? No, you show it. Okay. Well, they won't be able to see it, but we'll try.
Sure they can.
Ed said the man that caught this bent down, twisted the gun apart into two pieces, and put it inside of a canvas bag and walked briskly towards Bowers' tower. Let's see if we have a picture of it. Where would I show it, David?
Well, I meant just show the book cover.
Oh, there's the book cover. Get one of those while you're here, would you? So Ed didn't realize that the person was firing a rifle. Then he sees the president's car come underneath the underpass into his line of sight going up Stemmons on-ramp. And Ed said, and has always told us, that when he saw that car, he realized that's got to be the president. The president was laying face down with his head on the driver's side of the back seat. His feet are up on the car, on the door handle, or close to the door handle on the passenger side, and Jackie had positioned herself on the floorboard on her knees and was violently shaking him. Now Ed could look down into the car, and he said the back of the president's head was missing about that much of it right here. He said it looked like red jello. He said, oh my God, that must have been the guy that fired a gun at the president and hit him. Instantly, Ed realized that guy was the shooter. Ed said he started running after the car and waving his hands because he couldn't scream. So he's waving his hands and running along Stemmons on-ramp. When the Secret Service car came through, Agent Hickey, the agent in the back seat of the limousine, of the follow-up car, with an AR-15, pointed it right at Ed as the car's going away from him. So Hickey is holding the rifle like this, pointing it at Ed. Car is going up Stemmons Freeway. Ed said he stopped. Probably a good idea. So Ed got back to his car, drove around Dealey Plaza looking for how to get behind the picket fence. Cops were everywhere. Ed went to the dentist. Ed said in his own mind, he goes, the president's dead. There's no way this guy's going to have a hole in his head that big. Ed got to the dentist. Remember, he's deaf. Tells the dentist, I got a broken tooth. The dentist is in and out of the exam room, listening to the radio of the conversation between the reporters are saying, President Kennedy's been shot. We don't know what's going on. The guy comes back, and the dentist comes back into Ed's room, and Ed says, I just saw the president. And according to what he said, Ed wrote down on a piece of paper, JFK shot. And the dentist looked at that and go, how the hell did you know that? And I was there. Or Ed said, saw it, something along that line. So the dentist kept going in and out, listening to the updates, while Ed's going, hey, tooth. So Ed left the dentist office and got a temporary filling or whatever it was, instead of going back to work, went to the flower shop. Well, his mother and father ran the flower shop. And when Ed walked in the door in the middle of the day, the work day, his father was livid. What the heck are you doing here? Aren't you at work? Dad, I broke a tooth. And I was down Dealey Plaza and saw President Kennedy. I don't care. Get back to work. So Ed lived like that for several weeks before he could finally tell his uncle, who was a policeman on the Dallas Police Department in the auto theft division. 2 weeks later was Thanksgiving, or the weekend later was Thanksgiving. Ed's family met at the Hoffman house. He was going to tell his uncle, hey, this is what I saw. Yeah.
How old was he?
Ed was 29 years old.
How old?
29. Yep. Married and had a child already. And here, the irony, their anniversary, 11/22/63, or 56. 11/22/56. So Ed goes back to work. So Ed and Rosie, his dear wife, she's a deaf mute too. The only people that have ability to speak in their family is their daughter. And the daughter is a level 4 or 5 American Sign Language interpreter, so she can talk to him. And she's court appointed, she could be a court representative. Anyway, long story about that. So Ed says, he reminded us, he says, I was watching TV and they kept showing the book depository. He goes, that isn't where the guy was. He says he was behind the fence. And Ed said, if I'd had a brick, I would have thrown it through the television. Because then they showed Oswald. He goes, that ain't the guy I saw with the gun. I don't know who this guy is. Of course, they didn't have closed caption back then, so all they can see is images. They can't hear what Cronkite or David Brinkley or whoever is talking. So Ed, hangs his head, tells his uncle, hey, I saw this, and they go, his uncle, I called his uncle, who was about 145 years old, sounded like on the phone. I said, Mr. Hoffman, did your nephew talk to you that weekend? Oh yeah, Eddie talked to me. I said, what did he talk about? Well, he talked about seeing the shooter on the fence line. I said, did you tell anybody in the police department about that? Oh, no. We didn't want anything to happen to him. What? Wouldn't you think that'd have been important? Well, yeah, but Fritz's men took care of it, so we're okay. Okay, so Ed, assuming that his uncle is going to take the steps to contact the right people, Ed's waiting around for the Warren Commission to call him. Of course, nobody knows him because he hadn't been interviewed. We fast forward to 1967, and Ed's supervisor at Texas Instruments says, man, you need to tell somebody. Because if you saw a guy behind the fence, they say us Oswald guy did it. So they made an arrangement for the FBI agent to interview Ed. Now, Ed is a deaf mute. He has always been a deaf mute. He died as a deaf mute. But the FBI, knowing that in advance, didn't have an interpreter. So when Ed shows up, he has to draw in crude form the fence, the building, the highway, where he was at, where he went. The FBI agent, I can't remember his name, but it's in my book. I'm sorry. I hate when people do that. In my book, I said, in the book, we made reference to the two agents that he spoke to. He spoke to one first time in '67, and he told him the story. And the guy actually went with Ed out to Stemmons and took color slides. We haven't seen those slides in 60 years. That's part of the official record. It's an investigative tool. It's part of your investigation. You take pictures, measurements, whatever, that goes in the file. Even if you don't use it, you have it. So, nobody believed him, nobody talked to him, he didn't get a call, nothing happened. House Senate Committee on Assassinations didn't call him. Another FBI agent interviewed him, didn't take any notes. We've never seen the notes. So Ed went along just knowing that I know something, they didn't care about it, and that's why he was frustrated. Ed Tatro, go ahead. I know you're dying at the bit. Go.
Well, first of all, it's all right to mention your book. It's an excellent book. And he has copies of it. It really is an excellent book. Number two, I do have a question, but
Go.
number two, something I don't think I've ever told you. The Guilty Men was on in November, it was on 5 times in 1 week and then shut down completely. It's the greatest example of censorship in American history. And it was on that Monday night, and I got down to Dallas, I think, on that Thursday. And I believe it was the next Friday, I went to Dealey Plaza. And I'm standing on in front of the pagoda. I think I just talked to Jesse Ventura, who was down there.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there, and this man comes running up the bank towards me. I hadn't even seen who he was. And he runs up, and he hugs me. It was Ed Hoffman.
There's Ed Hoffman.
Yeah, that gives you an idea how sincere he was. He didn't know me from a hole in the wall, other than that,
Yeah.
and he hugged me. My question is, if you could, if you could interview someone pertaining to this case, my choice would be Don Reynolds. I'll be talking about him tonight. If you had one guy,
Ed
one
Hoffman.
person you could talk to,
Ed Hoffman.
even now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
If somebody asked me the other day, if you could go back in time and be invisible, and you could be any place in the world at any date and time, where would you be? I said, I'd be behind the picket fence. I'd just stand there and watch. Now, my final point is, we verified everything that Ed told us has been verified either in Dallas police records or photographs. The only way Ed could have known these things, he didn't read the 26 volumes, he didn't read the Warren report. He saw what he saw based on what was happening in front of him. He didn't make it up. He's not looking for money. Gerald Posner, God love him, he's a good human being, I'm sure, to somebody. But he said he interviewed in his book, Case, whatever it's called, Bullshit Closed, sorry, Case Closed. He says, in my interview with Ed Hoffman, we know he didn't interview Ed Hoffman. So I asked him, Ed, did Gerald Posner ever talk to you? He goes, I don't even know who that is. Nobody ever, the only people that ever interviewed me is Jim Mars, you, Casey. That's it. Nobody's ever talked to me. So Gerald Posner's
David, I have a question.
story. Yeah, go. Go
Can
ahead.
y'all hear me?
Yes.
This is Chanico Willis. Did you hear Robert and Janet Rugden's presentation yesterday on the Others of Kruger film?
I did not.
Okay. My father was behind the grassy knoll filming. He was involved before, during, and after. He was filming for the agency, and he was Naval Intelligence Master Chief. The information you have given me, when David Ditton spoke earlier today, he said this is about collaboration and interconnectivity. I am not a researcher. I am a child of an agent who was involved. And this information that you're giving me about Ed Hoffman is new to me, that he worked at Texas Instruments and R&D. When Dad got to Dallas November 4th and the guy knocked on his door November 15th, this is where you go work next week, as he carried the plans through left field, he was positioned in R&D at Texas Instruments. I have documentation that he worked there. And when I was 14, he was sitting in the living room describing to me not knowing any of this other than don't ask questions about his agency work. And he described, Tiana, do you know they can make a bullet that could go in someone's head and explode out the back? The hole in the head smaller and the back is just so big. And I didn't understand that till 40 years later when he's dying and he tells me of his involvement. And is there any information other when Ed was working at Texas Instruments in R&D department? Do you know which level of R&D he worked in? Because Dad was in the think tank division and doing photo intelligence work for the agency for different things.
Well, the only thing I can say for sure is Ed worked in the R&D department, and they worked on his area of specialty was calculators, developing the TI, whatever it was.
Okay. Then my
graphic
dad didn't know him. Then my dad didn't know him because Dad brought home one of the first handheld calculators before it was ever released to the market.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a Zoom tomorrow night, and I have documentation to vet all this. So I'd appreciate getting with you offline because I'm still trying to fit out where Dad was. This is the car he drove that day. It was a 1957 Dodge Coronet. I have the last four numbers of the license plate, and it was parked somewhere back behind the picket fence. And he was wearing his black trench coat. So if any researchers can find this vehicle and any of the myriad of pictures out there, I'd really appreciate it because I would like to find where that fits in. Thank you.
Brian, can you hear me? It's Peter Hymans.
Wait, what? Oh, go ahead.
It's not quick, but I'll be as concise as I can. As a forensic and ballistics, I'll say expert, somebody who's very experienced, it's always bothered me that Lee Harvey Oswald, in quotes, bought a Mannlicher Carcano rifle out of a magazine where in the same ad was the M1 Garand for a slightly higher price. He had been trained with the Garand, and
Right.
why he did not fire when the limo was coming down Houston Street towards the book depository is a great mystery. So what I'm quite convinced of is that this was a big event. It was a show. And my question to you is, do you think that there was a Operation Northwoods kind of event going on to try to frame the Cubans with a false assassination, and they were double crossed by people that really did pull off the assassination?
Well, that's a great question, but as far as who's involved, Cuba or anything like that, I don't have any information that would support. I would just have a theory, but this was certainly. You're right. If I was going to pull this off, that would be the last weapon I would ever pick was a bolt action rifle. That's ridiculous. You waste too much time operating the bolt and trying to find your target again. Why not use an automatic rifle? You don't have to pull the trigger. Just pull the trigger. Bullets will come out until the end of the clip is emptied. But yeah, that's the Mannlicher was a prop. Why they picked that hunk of crap, I don't know, but not my first choice. Bad choice.
Thank you.
Choice.
Thank you.
All right, I'm done.
Let's give Brian a hand, folks. We're gonna let you read.